of all creation,
Lord of all creation,
of water, earth, and sky.
of water, earth, and sky.
The heavens are your tabernacle.
The heavens are your tabernacle.
Glory to the Lord on high.
Glory to the Lord.
God of wonders beyond our galaxy. You are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy. Lord of heaven and earth. Lord of heaven and earth. Early in the morning,
Early in the morning,
I will celebrate the
I
light.
will celebrate the light.
When I stumble in the darkness,
When I stumble in the darkness,
I will call your name by
I
night.
will call your name.
God of wonders beyond our galaxy. You are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy. Lord of heaven and earth. Lord of heaven and earth. Lord of God of wonders beyond our galaxy. You are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy. God of wonders beyond our galaxy. You are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy. Lord of heaven and earth.
Good morning, my Brooks family. This is your brother Jay, recording a message for all of you from my humble suburban Cary estate and sports complex. I do miss all of you, and I want to share some thoughts with you about communion today, beginning in Proverbs 27, verses 19 through 22. Proverbs 27, verses 19 through 22. As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. Death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are human eyes. The crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but people are tested by their praise. Do you grind a fool in a mortar? Though you grind a fool in a mortar, grinding them like grain with a pestle, you will not remove their folly from them. This scripture I came across this many years ago, but it just has never left my mind. Unlike some scriptures, that they seem to come and go, this one has really just stuck with me for a very long time, and it boils down to a couple of reasons. One of which being the outright bluntness about how the human eyes can't be satisfied. We're always attracted to praise. We're going to be attracted to material things. And the things that we seek to satisfy us, although they never do, even if they never did, take us away from what God would want us to be satisfied for, which is bringing glory to him. Another thing about this passage is about the foolishness. It talks about our folly and how we just can't get away from it. That's kind of hard to come to grips with. Sometimes I catch myself saying, well, the verse is really about a fool, and a fool can't lose their folly. But is it really talking about a fool? My pride tells me that I don't engage in folly. I'm an educated adult. I seek to make wise, good decisions. And folly is defined as the lack of good sense and normal prudence, or tragically foolish actions. I'd like to believe that's not me. Yet, I see in 1 Corinthians 3 that even my wisdom is foolishness to God, and that my wise thoughts are futile. And therein lies the rub, if you will. I'm in the mortar, and my folly can't be ground out. My actions are both justified and limited by my own understanding. So that serves to give me a righteousness that is, at best, is full of good intentions, but at its worst is designed for my own convenience. So how do I overcome this conundrum, this situation? I don't. Christ has done it for me. I just surrender to God my imperfections and my need for forgiveness through the sacrifice of Jesus. And I pray that his grace is sufficient. I pray that my self-righteousness is replaced with a righteousness with God. And I pray that the fruit of the Spirit will manifest in my heart and be evident in the life it reflects. That's the best I can do. Recording this message reminds me of an award show, some sort of televised award show like the Grammys, where a performer wins an award, but yet they can't be present to win. They're on tour, they're in the studio recording their next great album, or maybe they're even sick or in the hospital. So they film a pre-recorded message to accept the award, and they thank their agent and their parents and so on and so on. But the more I thought about it, I realized that Christianity really is the opposite of that. We're present to accept the award if we choose to, the award of forgiveness. But the work that earned it was done in our absence, and it covers our folly and our imperfections, yet we didn't earn it, and still, even better, one day we'll be restored to live with God and Christ who did earn it for eternity. Now, I leave you to pray amongst yourselves. Do know that I long to be with everybody as soon as possible. I hope we have the potluck of all potlucks since the history of potlucks when we are together. But in the meantime, I just know that you're all missed. You're valuable to me and my family, and I do hope these words today help you in your communion with your family. Peace.
There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer,
morning. I'm Dennis Connor, and welcome once again to online worship with the Brooks Avenue Church of Christ. It's good to have you with us today. A couple of things before we begin with the message today. First, as most of our Brooks Avenue family are already aware, next Sunday, August the 2nd at 7 p.m., we will be having our first parking lot church at the Brooks Avenue building. We're going to be meeting outside in one of our parking lots. If you're not a member at Brooks Avenue and you're watching this morning, hey, we would love for you to drop in and to visit with us and to worship with us. Hey, bring a chair. If you don't have one, we'll find one for you. But we would love to see you. We would love to have you with us. There's already information that's been given out to all of our Brooks Avenue family, and there's more that's going to be said in the upcoming week. But please keep that in mind this coming Sunday, August the 2nd at 7 p.m. The other thing that I want to mention very quickly is I want to continue to encourage you, if you're not already plugged in to a small group or to a journey group, to get connected with a small group. Now, we want to continue to build up our small groups. If you go to our website, you can find information there about how to get connected to a journey group. And it's also just as simple as talking to folks in your neighborhood, in your community, or reaching out to someone else at Brooks Avenue and inviting them to begin a small group with you for worship and for doing life together. So I hope that you will make it a point to do that and get connected as best you can. This morning, the message is going to be taken from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31. Why do you say, O Jacob, and complain, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, even young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not faint. I've got a confession to share with you this morning. I'm tired. Now, I'm really tired. Some days just feel weary. And I know it's a combination of things. Maybe it's the situation that we find ourselves in today, trying to figure out how to do church, the best way to do church during a pandemic. Maybe it's the stress of substituting virtual relationships for real face-to-face relationships. Now, I've heard so many people talk about, they have all of these Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, virtual meetings, and they just come out from those exhausted and tired. And I understand exactly what you're talking about. Maybe it's just that I'm getting older and the pressures of ministry are taking their toll. And life itself is just simply taking its toll. And I suspect I'm not the only one. I suspect that many of you are feeling the same thing. You're tired. You're weary. Maybe you feel like the harder you try, the behinder you get. Maybe it's the stresses of your job, the responsibilities there. Maybe it's the stresses of family. But it seems like, the more you give, the more that life and people just take from you. You give so much of yourself, but very, very little is being put back in. You experience burnout, weariness. It's hard for you to get motivated to do the things that you know you need to do, and maybe that you even want to do. And I'm not talking about medical conditions this morning, but I'm just talking about the weariness that so often comes from just doing life. You're just tired, weary. So there is this individual kind of weariness, but there's also a communal weariness. Organizations, churches sometimes just get tired of the struggle, weary. And the thing is, weariness can dull our vision of God. In fact, sometimes it can even so distract us that it takes our attention completely off of God. And that's certainly not going to help, because the less and less that our attention is focused on God, then the more this emotional and spiritual tiredness sets in. So we need a good word today, a hopeful word. And I believe that we find it in this text from the old prophet Isaiah. The chapter begins with God saying, comfort my people. Now, it appears that as chapter 40 opens, the people of God are nearing the end of the period of exile in Babylon. They have finished their hard service. They've paid the price for their earlier rebellion and pride and sinfulness. And now God is preparing, it would seem, to send them back home. But as you would expect, it has not been an easy time for the exiles. Now you may say, well, they deserved it. They deserved to be there. And yes, they did. But still, the journey was a hard one. And they're tired. Many of that original generation that was initially carried off into Babylon have died and passed from the scene. And now we are well into the second generation of exiles. But there's good news that's coming to them. Isaiah tells them that a highway is being prepared, a highway for the Lord to make his way back to them, a highway of return for God, and when he comes back, it's going to be glorious. So he's coming back for them. He's getting ready to deliver them from their exile, but deliver them to what? To go back home? What's back there in Jerusalem waiting for them? There's no temple. It's been destroyed. The walls around the city still lie in ruins. The walls are a heap of rubble. So there's no protection around the city, nothing to keep them safe. So what are they going back to? The exile has been a difficult time for them, but going home is going to be difficult as well. And then in verse 27, we hear them complain. When it comes to God, we're just out of sight, out of mind. He hasn't paid any attention to us for a long, long time. The Lord just simply disregards our situation, what we're experiencing, what we're feeling. They felt like God wasn't involved any longer, that he didn't care. And the weariness of life can do that to us, can't it? It can make us question whether or not God really does care about what we're experiencing. And it's not just about what is happening directly to us. I mean, look around. We look around and we see everything else that's going on around us. We see the injustice. We see the greed, the callousness, the selfishness, the oppression, just we see all the brokenness all around us, and it becomes overwhelming sometimes. And we grow weary of the coldness and the meanness of the world around us. And it's just so tempting for us to complain, what's going on around here? Why doesn't God do something? And does he even care about what's going on in the world? But in our text, it's like God is anticipating these complaints. And so leading up to verse 27, he spends time developing a rationale for why they should trust him and why they should care about him. Now, first, it's important to recognize that God wants all the messages that follow from the beginning of the chapter to be understood as a word of comfort, not a word of condemnation. And so the chapter begins, comfort my people, says your God. He wants words of comfort and encouragement to be spoken to them. God understands at this point in their experience that they don't need condemnation. They'd already heard plenty of that prior to their exile, and rightly so. We can't discount that at all, but now is not the time. Not when they are nearing the end of it, not when they are weary. No, they need something else. They don't need to be spanked anymore. And he understands that. They need tender words, comforting words, hopeful words. When you're so tired, when you're so weary that you don't even know if you're going to be able to put one foot in front of the other, do you really need somebody to tell you what a mess you've made of things? I mean, do you really need somebody to tell you just how messed up you are and how messed up your life is? Do you really need to hear how bad you are? I don't think so. And those times we need a word of encouragement, a reason to hope, a reason to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And times like those, do you respond better to condemnation or to a word of encouragement? I think the answer to that question is pretty clear. So in verse 6, Isaiah hears a voice telling him to cry out, and he asks, what should I cry? And what should I say? And then what follows is a series of messages that are ultimately intended to build confidence in the promises of strength and renewal that we read about just a moment ago in our text for this morning. And the voice tells the people that while everything else is temporary, the word of our God stands forever. Listen to the text, chapter 40. A voice says, cry out. And I said, what shall I cry? All men are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of the Lord blows on them, and surely the people are grass. The grass withers and flowers fall, but the word of our God stands forever. What the voice is saying is that the word, the promises of God, are eternal. And because they're eternal, they are reliable. The promise of God is reliable. And then in the next message, the voice tells him to take the good news to Jerusalem, the good news that God is coming. Listen to this in verses 9 through 11. You who bring good tidings to Zion, go up on a high mountain. You who bring good tidings to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up. Do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Judah, here is your God. See, the sovereign Lord comes with power, and his arm rules for him. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms, and he carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. God is coming, and God is coming with power. The sovereign Lord, the Lord who rules all, the Lord who is in control of all, is coming. He's coming with his arm of power, but it is not an oppressive power. No, no, no. That image of power is then counterbalanced with this beautiful image of a tender shepherd. A shepherd who is watching after his sheep now and who gathers his flock close to his heart and who is tenderly leading the ewes with their young. God's power is sovereign. He is absolute, but yet he cares like a shepherd. And now, the next message that follows raises and answers the fundamental question, who can compare to God? Now, so far, the rationale for trusting God, for trusting his promise, has been that, one, the promise is reliable, the word of God is everlasting. Two, his power is absolute. And three, he cares like a shepherd. And now we come to this word. Add to all of that, God is beyond compare. Twice that question is asked. Who shall we compare God to? And who shall be and who can be compared to God? Verse 18, to whom then will you compare God? What image will you compare him to? And then again in verse 25, God asks, to whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Now the voice then begins to drive this point home by asking a series of 5 mic drop questions in verses 12 through 14. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? Or with the breath of his hand marked off the heavens? Mic drop. And who has held the dust of the earth in a basket? Or weighed the mountains on the scales and the hills in a balance? Who has understood the Spirit of the Lord, or instructed him as his counselor? Whom did the Lord consult to enlighten him? And who has taught him the right way? Who was it that taught him knowledge, or showed him the path of understanding? And the answer to all those questions is nobody. Nobody, because nobody else and nothing else can compare to God. And furthermore, he goes on to say, when it comes to this incomparable nature of God, in verses 15 through 17, that he says that the nations themselves and the rulers of the nations are like a drop in the bucket compared to our God. And furthermore, the idols, in verses 18 through 20, the idols that men create with their own hands can't compare to God. How can you compare something made by the created to God, the Creator? And the answer, of course, is you can't. And then the voice asks, don't you understand who we're talking about here? Don't you understand that we are talking about the transcendent God who sits enthroned above everyone and everything else? Listen to the language in verses 21 through 24 as we're getting closer and closer now to the promise of the text. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood since the earth was founded? He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and his people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. He brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground than he blows on them and they wither, and a whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. Your God, the voice tells them, is the transcendent God, the God who sits on his throne above everything else, the world and everything else beneath him. The God who rules over even the princes of the earth. In fact, God is so powerful, God is so incomparable that he just blows on the princes and the rulers of the earth, and they dry up, and the wind carries them away like chaff. Who can compare to God? No one. And nothing. And then the final piece of the portrait of God's incomparability is his creative power. He is the Creator. Verses 25 and 26. To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls them each by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. To whom will you compare me? The Creator? The answer is no one. Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. He is God, the Creator. In fact, I love this image in the text. In fact, God is even so intimate with the stars that he has names for each one of them. And so the prophet asks these weary exiles, understanding then who it is and who we're talking about here, how can you think for even a moment that this great, incomparable God, this God who is beyond compare, how can you think for even a moment that he doesn't care, that he's not aware of what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing? How can we think for a moment that the sovereign one who rules the nations, the transcendent one who sits on his throne above the circle of the earth, the creator one who put the stars in their places and gave them names, the Holy One to whom no one or no thing can compare? I mean, how can even we think for a moment that he's not concerned about our weariness? The truth of the matter is, the everlasting God, the God who himself never grows tired, never grows weary, the God who is so far beyond human comprehension, is ready. He is ready to renew the strength of those who put their hope in him. So listen again to the text. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. And here it is. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Now, the word hope, as it's used in this text, has the sense of trust, of trusting in God, of clinging to God. And the word renew literally means to exchange. It's a word that would be used for instance, when talking about changing clothes. So the thought of the text is then that those who put their trust in God, those who trust in his promises, will then renew, they will exchange their tiredness, their weariness, for the strength that God has to offer. The seemingly inexhaustible energy of the young does finally reach a limit. But the supply of God is without limit. Ralph West offers a helpful insight here as he writes, in a quote, Isaiah doesn't say that God gives power to people who are always successful to make them more successful. Isaiah doesn't say that God gives more toughness to those who are already tough. No. What Isaiah says is that the God of majesty and power is so merciful that he gives strength to men and women who say, I can't make it. I'm tired. I'm ready to give up and to give in. He goes on, the weak and weary person will receive God's strength and power. Not those who say, I'll grit my teeth and clench my fists and I'll pull myself up by my own bootstraps. God's mercy is for the messed up, not for those who already believe that they are mighty. End quote. And so it all comes down to this, the good word that we need, the good news, is that when we trust God, when we throw ourselves on the God who himself never grows tired nor weary, he will give us the strength we need. Trust him. Throw yourself on his mercy. Spend time alone with him. Just open your tired heart up to him and let him fill it back up with his strength and his power. If I can quote Ralph West again. Some may say, I'm not a flyer, I'm a runner. Well, if that's the case, God can measure his mercy to suit your circumstances. And Isaiah says, you will run and not grow weary. Well, some may say, well, preacher, I don't feel like running anymore. Well, if you're a walker, Isaiah says, they that wait upon the Lord shall walk and not faint. And he goes on, God in mercy will give us the grace to fly, to run, or to walk. End quote. So to all of us who are weary today, God gives us the strength we need. I hope the old prophet has been able to give you a, oh, and I am talking about Isaiah, not me. I hope the old prophet has been able to share with you today, to give you a good word, a word of good news, and a word of hope. Hey, thanks for being with us. God bless you. Don't forget, next Sunday, August the 2nd, 7 p.m., please join us if you can for Parking Lot Church. God bless.
In need of grace, in need of love, in need of mercy raining down from high above, in need of strength, in need of peace, in need of things that only you can give to me. In need of Christ, the perfect Lamb, my refuge strong, the great I am. This is my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need. In need of grace, in need of love, in need of mercy raining down from high above, in need of strength, in need of peace, in need of things that only you can give to me. In need of Christ, the perfect Lamb, my refuge strong, the great I am. This is my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need. In need of Christ, the perfect Lamb, my refuge strong, the great I am. This is my song, my humble plea. I am your child, I am in need. I am your child.